Welcome, everybody. It's great that you've all had time to join with us tonight for a bit of a talk about SEO. My talk tonight is going to be talking very superficially about lots of important topics that you can use on your websites right tomorrow to bring your websites up to the next level. I won't be going into details about how to use each of these features because each one is so complicated, or it takes so much time to describe that we'd only then be able to cover one or two features. But the keywords that I'm using in the topic, you can use those then to find blogs and further to-dos, how to bring progress further than with the steps that I'm discussing. My presentation is already online on my website, so you don't need to take notes about whatever you can see on the screen. But some of the things I'll be talking about, they won't actually be in the presentation. Then if that's interesting for you, you should be then taking a few little notes. Get myself. Okay. My name is Bruce Jackson, and I've been living here in Austria for about 25 years now. And I'm a technical SEO specialist since the last 16 years, and also active now in the WordPress community for the last 6 years. And this is what I'll be talking about tonight. I'm going to start off with the really easy things that you can do in maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And also the first step here, the optimizing your Google My Business listing. If you do this correctly, you'll probably get 20 or 30% more traffic on your website in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Everybody has something here to improve, and the improvements here have massive effects then on the traffic coming to your website. I'll then be going into finding out how your website's looking on Google, who are your competitors, and how do you find out what your competitors are doing that you could be copying or that you could be doing better. And then I'll go through some simple changes you can make on your website to improve the traffic coming to your website, how long people stay on your website, and to improve your ranking then in Google will be the long term. Number 5, 6, and 7, they're a little bit more complicated. And these topics I'll just be talking about in short snippets to give you ideas what you can actually do on your website if you've got time, and if you're in a high competitive business, if you're a doctor, for example, then you need to be going really down into the more complicated steps. Also, if you're a blogger, then you'll also be needing to do number 6 and number 7. So getting into the first basics, Google My Business. This is probably the most useful feature that Google offers to you to get on the first page in Google without doing almost any work. Anytime anybody searches locally, the map will always be visible at the top of the screen, and the top 3 businesses in the map will be immediately visible, and they get lots and lots of traffic for these terms. So if you're doing any sort of local business or a local service industry, a service supplier, you want to make sure that for the Google My Business, that your Google My Business page is perfectly optimized. One thing that I hear a lot from customers is they work from home and they don't have an office where the customers can come to, so they don't want a Google My Business entry. They don't want people seeing where they live. Please still create the Google My Business entry, but then once you've filled everything out, you can then set a business area, and don't set this too big. Set it to maybe 30 or 40 or 50 kilometers, but don't say, the whole of Austria or the whole of Europe. If you do this, then you'll rank in the whole of Europe, but you'll rank probably on the 10th page or the 20th page because Google doesn't see that you're very applicable to the most of the users in this area. So set the service area to a smaller region, 50 or 60 kilometers, and then go back to your address. And at the bottom of the address, there's an option, clear entry. And if you click this, then the pin is no longer showing on the map where your business is, but just the area around your business. Okay, the next step that we've got, business category, the categories. Most people, when they go to the Google My Business, they select one category. For example, in my case, I selected internet marketing as my category and thought I was finished. But you can actually have lots of subcategories, and for each one of these, you'll then rank for extra keywords in the search. So I added web design, trying to think. Yeah, I can't remember all the ones but you can add 5 or 6 subcategories. For each of these subcategories, you'll also appear then in the search. Instead of just appearing for web design or for search engine optimization, you can appear then for when users search other associated terms in the Google. Your map entry can also then come up at the top of the entry. To find out the categories that you want, look at what your competitors are using. So put the top keywords together with Vienna, or together with Austria, or together with, if you're in a competitive area, you might want to then go and also look at Berlin or London if you're doing an English website. But look at places that have high competition, because these are going to be doing more advanced optimization techniques, and they're going to be choosing their category more carefully. Make sure you choose the main category. A lot of people choose a very general category like doctor, when they should be choosing a subcategory like dentist, because then you'll be ranking much better in the search results. Google still knows you're a doctor, or still knows that you're doing whatever the overall term is for this category. But the more focused you are, the more chance you'll rank in the top 3 in the search results. What else do we have there? The other thing is to go back to these categories, to go back to the search results every 3 or 4 months, because Google adds lots of new categories each month. And also sometimes Google deletes the categories. And if they delete the category you're in, you might then suddenly jump up to the top category instead of being in a good subcategory. So it's worth always to check out your My Business listing once a month. See, this then follows on to the next thing that I can talk about. Rethink your business name. It's actually not recommended by Google that you change your business name, but if you can add a keyword to your business name, this will have a massive effect on your rankings. So if you're a dentist, then there should be dentist as part of your business name. It shouldn't just say Dr. Schmidt. It should be Dr. Schmidt Dentist, or Dentist Dr. Schmidt. But you have to try and, don't overdo this. Don't put 4 or 5 keywords in, or Google's either going to ignore it or devalue your ranking for the Google My Business place. So, but my tip is really try and find one keyword that you can add onto your business, the thing that most often people are looking for you in the Google search results. Okay. There are lots and lots of fields in Google My Business, and it's worth to try and fill out as many as possible. So the description field in the Google My Business, you can add a long description, now 3,000 or 4,000 words you can add in. What you can also do is you can format this and add links. So you can add then links to special services you provide on your website. You can add bold and change colors in this text to highlight specific things that you want customers to see. This description isn't visible for most people, but if they click on your business, they see it. And Google uses the text in this description also as part of the ranking field My Business entry. So it's worth to at least have all the main points about your business listed in this option. The next thing to do, and this is really, really important, get reviews. Ask customers, when you send an invoice to a customer that you know is happy, add at the end of the invoice email a request that they would go to your Google Maps entry and post a review there. Because it's really, really easy to get one-star reviews, especially from competition. It still always keeps happening that competition go in and post a 1-star review. But it's very hard to get 5-star reviews if you don't ask. So please ask. When you get a review, always respond to it. Even if you get a 1-star review, respond to it. Try and be creative, try and be proactive. Mention to them that if they contact you by email, you'll be willing to try and help resolve whatever the issue was. If the review is obviously coming from somebody who wasn't a customer, politely mention that you have no knowledge of this person, but if they call you, you'll try and resolve the issue so that other customers realize there's probably something a bit strange going on here. Okay, the next step is to add photos. Customers still sometimes upload photos, and Google by default uploads the street view from outside your business, which may not be all that applicable if you're in the middle of a busy city, or if it's your private house, then maybe you don't want a photo from the outside being posted in Google. So upload a photo from yourself, upload a photo from inside your business, upload a photo from the products that you're offering to customers. Try and get creative, and try and upload photos regularly. Don't just post one photo or 2 or 3 photos when you set up the account. Also go back in and add as many photos as you can over the next months, and make sure that the photos have an appropriate name. Make sure that the photos show something so positive about your business, so that customers are motivated to come back to you regularly to have a look and see what's going on. Fill out the products and services fields. These are all the fields in a row down on the Google My Business account. The products and services, again, customers don't see these so easily. They certainly don't see them in the overview, but the words used in your customers and in your products and services are also used for the ranking, so that Google knows what actually you're trying to offer for your customers. Google will also correlate this with what's on your website, and will also pull in terms from your website automatically, but you can help Google if you know what's important for your customers. These things should be listed in the products and services. With the services, you can also add things like a description and a price, so that customers then know what it's going to cost without actually coming onto your website. So what you're trying to do here is motivate somebody who's found your business in the map, and especially on mobile, the map is shown quite often, and it's often then with 5 or 10 entries. If somebody comes on your map entry, you're trying to motivate them to come to your website. This is a bit of a trick. Google has a question and answer section where customers can post questions, and then you can answer them. But it's actually in the Google terms and conditions that it's no problem for you to actually post your own questions and answer them, to try and help customers to know how you work with your customers, what sort of pricing you have, what sort of delivery times maybe you have. So feel free to post a question and then answer it yourself, and then upvote this answer so that it's shown clearly in your profile. This is a very, very good way to show your customers what your business is offering, and to answer the questions that the customers are maybe thinking, this product is maybe too expensive, or maybe the delivery is too long, or maybe the business is obviously in Vienna, but maybe they don't then deliver to Salzburg. But you can then say this with a question. Somebody could say, do you deliver outside of Vienna? And then the answer would be, we have no problem delivering anywhere in Vienna, anywhere in Austria, and with your shipping costs. Yeah, Google actually encourages this, so it's something you should be doing. Also, make sure that there are keywords in these frequently asked questions. Don't just post text. What is? Try and frame it so that you're actually using your top keywords in these questions, because that will also help your business then rank better in the Google Maps entry. Okay. We've finished now doing what we can do with Google. Now what we want to find out is, what does Google think of our website, and what are our competitors doing in Google's, so we can find out where are we positioned and where should we be optimizing ourselves to get better. So the first thing to do, go into Google and search for your company by name, not by their website address. You want to make sure, are you in position number 1, which you should be. If your name is fairly unique, then you should be in position 1. If you're not in position 1, why not? Maybe you've got, maybe you don't have enough links coming into your website. Maybe you've made an error on your website. So maybe there's some sort of technical error on your website. It's too slow, or you haven't definitely defined a title and a meta description for your website. Maybe your company name doesn't actually occur very often on the website. That's more rarely an issue. The other thing to check when you search for your company name is, are your competitors bidding on AdWords on your name? This is becoming more and more common now, which means that when a customer is searching for your company, the first thing they see in the search results is actually a competitor. And there's a very good chance they're actually going to click on this competitor and not actually ever come to your website, especially if the competitor's offering exactly the same product. This would be then in a case where you should be maybe thinking about making AdWords at least just for your own company name. This is very cheap. because you're already the perfect result for your company name. You're maybe only going to be paying a few cents per click. But by bidding on your keyword, on your company name, it makes it much more expensive for the competitor to bid on your keyword name. That means the competitor is now going to have to suddenly pay a much higher price. Before, maybe he was only paying a few cents for bidding on your keyword. And now he's going to have to be paying 1 or 2 euros to bid on your keyword. So it's not a nice thing to have to do, but sometimes this can be a great way to stop competitors stealing traffic away from you. The next step, okay, now we know where we are in the search results for our company. Now what we want to do is find out how good is our website in the search results. What does Google think about our website? How many pages has Google found? Is Google finding the right number of pages? If I know in WordPress that I've got 100 pages and I've got 50 blog posts, then Google should be finding something between 120 and 180 results. All of that I would consider is normal. If Google's only finding 1 result, which a lot of people come to me and say, nobody's finding me in Google, and it's because they've forgotten to take away the checkbox for the block search engines in WordPress. And this happens much more often than you would expect. The other thing that can very often happen is that you don't have a very good structure for the website, and Google is only finding 5 or 10 pages. Then this will be a step. Then, in this case, go to the search result. Go to Google and search for all my pages aren't being indexed. Something like this, and then you'll find an answer then from a blog post that'll show you how to track down the issue and then resolve the issue. The other thing that might be happening here, and happens much more commonly than any other problem, is that there are way too many pages being indexed. I've had websites where they've got 15 pages on the website, and Google has found 15,000 pages. It was a really common issue a couple of years ago because Yoast caused all images to be indexed as pages several years back. They resolved it quite quickly, but they didn't reset this option, so some websites still have the same problem, that all images are being indexed as pages in Google. And this is really critical because the image actually has no text, so they're all thin content. And if you have lots of images on your website, you'll be penalized by Google for having a thin content website, a website that has almost no text in comparison to the number of pages on the website. So if you're finding too many pages are being returned, check what are all these pages. Go through a small sample. You might find you've imported the demo content when you're setting up your website, that you imported the demo content, changed a few pages and so, posted your website online, but this demo content can still be found. And Google will index it all and say it's proper content and will be ranking your website for this demo. So I've had customers at veterinarian, and his website was full of computers because he'd imported a demo from a computer website and then filled out 4 or 5 pages with his text, changed the menu, but Google still finds over sitemaps. For example, with Yoast, there's a sitemap generated, and Google then found all these other pages and indexed them all. And then his website is then ranking for Toshiba computer, which he doesn't really want calls being made for that. And this will also then cause dilution, which means for the top keywords, you're not ranking very well anymore. Other things that can cause this, things like custom post types. A lot of themes have a custom post type for team members, and these team members will then be all added onto one page to the company page. But these individual posts, which might just be a photo and the telephone number, they might also be indexed. So it's important then to go back and check, make sure that these things, thin content pages, aren't showing up in the search results. What else have we got there? Okay. The other thing to do is to check out what your competitors are doing. Find out what the market's actually doing for the keywords that are important to you. The first thing I would recommend is go to Google Search Console, and in the Performance tab, that's the Leistung tab in German, in Search Console, see what keywords you're ranking for and which keywords are delivering you traffic, and for which keywords you're getting impressions. So that means your website is showing up, but you're not high enough in the search results to actually get traffic from these keywords. And these keywords we want to try and make better. It's the keywords where Google already says you should rank. and you are ranking somewhere, but you're not getting, maybe not getting enough clicks at the moment for these. Take these keywords, make a list of them, go to the search and put each one of them in and see what shows up for these keywords. Are you on the page maybe somewhere? Maybe you're on the page, but haven't filled out the title correctly. So maybe you're on the page and it just has your product name, but nothing else. No description of your product, for example, in the title. So you can then very easily fix these small issues. The other thing is, which special features are showing up in Google for these? Are there featured snippets showing up? Are there people also ask answers showing up? Are there lots of photos showing up? Knowing these things, then you can then think about, how could I maybe get the people also ask question coming from my website, or how could I get my images to be showing in the image search, showing at the top of the box? If it's a product, then maybe there's a product search at the top of the Google search results, and I can get my products then shown up in these. This is a talk I did last year about schema, and it's very easy to change these things, but you have to first know which ones are actually showing for the search. So the search results where my company is. Every type of search or type of business has different features that show up depending on what Google thinks is important for this area, or what Google thinks isn't being spammed for this area. So in the medical branch, there are no stars showing up, no review stars showing up anymore, because everybody was spamming this so much, and Google felt they were too important to show up for doctors. But for my business SEO or for web design, it's still possible to get these review stars showing up in the search results, and they help massively to get customers coming to your website. So have a look, see what the competitors are doing, and when you can see, they've all got review stars and I don't, how do I get them? Either go back to my old talk from last year, or just search in Google, how do I get review stars to show up next to my Google entry, my Google snippet? And you'll find then very, very quickly, you'll find then answers to these things. Install the free Mozbar plugin in your browser. There are different plugins available, but Mozbar is probably the most universal. And as long as you register on the website, you can freely use this for quite a lot of API calls per day. So you don't need to actually have an account with Moz. You do need to register with Moz for this though. But then when you search in Google, they'll add some extra information in the Google search showing how strong these websites are, how much authority they have, how many backlinks they have, so that you can very quickly see who are your real competitors, which are the stronger companies in the search result. And you'll also then see how you compare to the competitors. You'll actually see maybe you've got a domain authority that's very high, but you're still ranking below the competitors for your keywords. Then maybe we need to then look at the basics for the SEO. Page speed, title, and a few other things that we'll actually get into a little bit later. Once you know your top competitors, you can then do research on them and find out what else they're doing and what are they focusing on. Check their Google ads, find out what keywords they're focusing on, find out how they're describing their company. In the keywords, in the AdWords, because it costs a lot of money to run AdWords, people often do a lot of testing, a lot of A/B testing, and there's a lot of positive information that you can use on your website, not just for ads, but also for your website, to adjust your keywords and to adjust your text. If you see that all your competitors are focusing on free delivery, then you know obviously customers want free delivery. Then you can either think about, why don't I have free delivery? Or if I have it, why don't my customers maybe see it on the website? Maybe it's hidden away in the terms and conditions, but not being shown in a banner at the top of the page. So if you check the ad text, you'll find out new ideas and important features that your customers have already found, your competitors have already found out about. Then what you can do is research your competitor to see what else he's doing. So use the site competitor, use site double point, the semicolon, and put in the domain name of your competitor in Google, and you'll automatically straight away find out how many pages do they have indexed in Google. But what you can then also do is you can set a filter in the Google search results. You can set a filter by date and filter for the last year. And then you can find out how active the competitor is with your website. Are they posting a blog post every week, or are they posting maybe once every year? You can do them the same with your website and find out who's doing more work, who's being more active. And you also find out where are they focusing now. If you see the last 5 blog posts are all about one particular theme, maybe that's a theme you should also be covering. And in that case, you need to cover it better than your competitor. He was there first. You need to cover it in more detail. Or we'll talk a little bit later about content siloing. That's also something that you could focus on. Another feature you can use, which I didn't write down in the notes here, set up Google Alerts. Google Alerts is a free system from Google that when a particular keyword occurs anywhere in Google in the search results, you get an email about this, about a new page that's shown up in the results. Absolutely critical that you put your company name as a Google alert, so that if anybody writes about your company, positive or negative, you know about it straight away. So within a day or so, then you'll actually see if somebody's written a negative review about you somewhere in the internet. If somebody's posted a magazine article about your company, but maybe hasn't linked to your website, you'll find out about it straight away and can contact the journalist straight away to get a link then set to your website, these are the sorts of things that really make a big difference to the SEO if you can change these little errors that creep in. You can also set up Google Alerts for the competitors, for the company names from the competitors, and find out what they're doing. Maybe you'll find out then where they're getting their links from. You'll find out if they're being mentioned in articles in magazines. Maybe somebody's just posted a summary about the top 10 restaurants in Vienna with a special thing, and you're also serving the same food. You could contact this article, because you contacted them on the day it's published. They may be willing then to update the article and add an extra line for you. So it's things like this, knowing what the competitors are doing as soon as possible can help you change how you react to this in a very responsive way. Okay. Now we come back to what you can do with your website directly. How can you get more customers coming from the Google search results to your website? It's getting so much harder to show up in the Google results without paying for ads. There's a very good reason for this. Google makes money only with ads. They don't make any money from their Google organic search, but they need to provide a good service to customers, users. Otherwise, nobody will actually use Google. So they can't just fill everything with ads. They have to provide some sort of value as well. But Google is crowding the search results more and more down to the bottom of the page, putting in ads, putting in products from shops, putting in videos and all sorts of other things. A lot of these things are coming from Google, so that maybe on the first site page of Google, there are only Google properties. There's YouTube, there's the Google Maps, there's the Google search, the Google Ads, but there's maybe also no organic results visible at the top of the screen. So it's important for you to try and make sure that you get yourself in position number 1 in the search results, but also when you're in the search results, make sure that people see you. Another thing that's happened just in the last month or two is in America, a lot of the search results now don't have 10 organic results anymore. They only have 7, which makes it even harder to get into the top. If you were in position 8 up until now, suddenly this company is not being shown on the first page anymore. And this is already, in America, it's already showing up in 18% of the searches. In the last couple of weeks, some of the search results only had 5 organic results. So Google's playing around a little bit now, experimenting to see what's going on or what they can get away with. But it means you have to be, when somebody sees you, you need to really scream at them, click me, come to my website. I've got the product that you're looking for. I've got the service you're looking for. My blog posts are the best blog posts that are available on the internet. You have to be really, really visible in this little space that's left to you. You have to be visible. The first thing to do, the URL from your page, have a keyword in the URL. Don't have a page that has contact. The contact page should at least has contact and your business name, so the main keyword in your business. If it's a dentist, then contact dentist Vienna, for example, would be a good example for your contact page for the URL. So that the keyword is visible, and when somebody's searching for a dentist in Vienna, the keyword will be immediately pop out to the user, so they say, this is what I'm looking for. The next thing, once the URL is done, optimize your titles. Include your keyword in the title. Some people come to me and they say, I've got 20 keywords. No page can focus on 20 keywords. A page can't focus on more than 2 or 3 keywords at one time. If you've got more than 3 or 4 keywords that need to be on one page, split up the page or find some other way to divide the focus so that make subcategories. If it's one big category where you say, I've got 100 keywords here, then you need 5 to 20 pages to divide up these keywords. So in SEO, when I do mine, I wouldn't have a page for SEO with all my keyword research, all the on-site optimization, the off-site optimization, all the Google properties that you have a separate page for each little area. And this page is then optimized just for 2 or 3 keywords. For local SEO, always include your location in the title. If you're doing business only in Vienna, then Vienna has to be in your title. It's absolutely critical. The user sees it, Google sees it, you rank better, more users will click on your result. You have to donate a bit of space to put the location where you are into the title. Something else that works very, very well, every A/B test always shows that these features add lots and lots of clicks, so can maybe boost the clicks by between 10 and 30%. Use numbers. Yeah, so in the title, write 2020 for the year. The top 5, everybody knows about the top 5 tips, the top 5 whatever, or the 20 best. The numbers work. These things really do increase the number of clicks. Sometimes they look a bit spammy. You have to try and use it carefully without getting over the top, but they work. Put text in brackets. It sounds pretty amazing, but if you put something in brackets, people focus on it more, and then there's more chance that they'll actually click on it. Something that's come and gone and is always it's always possible to use, but don't overdo it. Emojis. So you can put a smiling face, you can put a big plus symbol, you can put a green check mark. These emojis work better, I find, in the meta description because you've got more place to play with. Emojis take up a lot of space. They take up 8 characters. So you can't add a lot of emojis to a title. Maybe just add 1, but in the meta description, you can add 5 or 6 of them, and they really do work. They have different colors, so that they stand out in the search results, so that even if you're in position number 3, your result stands out much more than the results in position number 1 and number 2. A lot of SEOs go over the top with this, but look at what your competitors are doing. Go back into the search results and look through the search results in your area, and also for the same keyword in Germany, so in Berlin or Munich. Look at what the competitors are doing and see if they're doing tricks like this with different symbols. There are also posts online that say which symbols are the most accepted by Google. Very often Google ignores these emojis. So if you have 3 or 4 of them in your title, don't be surprised if there's none shown, that they're all just blended out, and that you just see the normal text, and then the text will be even shorter than it normally was. So you can actually have a negative effect there. So that means also keep going back to the Google search, looking at the results and seeing, are my emojis still there? Are they working? Is my position getting better because I put them in there? Or maybe my users don't like this, and maybe my position is getting worse. Maybe I was on position 3 before and now I'm on position 6. Don't panic from one week to the next, but if it stays like that for a month, maybe consider removing the emojis again. There's no magic bullets with things like this, unfortunately. It's always a test them out, put them on 3 or 4 pages, and see if these 3 or 4 pages rank better. If they do rank better, then consider putting it on another 3 or 4 pages. Don't then suddenly put it on every single blog post you've got. Try and always do things in moderation. There are lots and lots of posts online about power words and emotion words, and these work really, really well in titles. Things like best or exclusive or the last chance or secret, comprehensive. All of these sorts of words, they encourage people to go to click and see what is the secret, who's got the first one or the last chance. So people will click through because it's inviting them to find out more information. Ask questions, things like, say, get information about or learn about, to try and encourage users to come onto your website to find what you're talking about here. Because in the title, there's not enough space to actually describe all of this. Meta descriptions. The tip online generally is you have to write a meta description for every single page. I find that just doesn't work. When I've got thousands of pages, we can't custom create a meta description for every single page. It just doesn't work. What's even more important here is Google only shows about 30% of our meta descriptions. When the user searches for a particular term and Google finds this term on the website, it's almost certain that Google will throw away our meta description and create a meta description including this keyword with a snippet from our web page. And there's nothing we can do to change that. So I create a meta description for the homepage. If there's a shop landing page, then I would create a meta description for that. I would create a meta description for the main services page or the main landing page where I expect lots of users probably would be landing, and that's maybe a bit more generic, that doesn't maybe have a very good focus keyword. Also for the contact page, I would create a custom meta description. But for all your products, don't worry about it. Google will always be picking up a description. There'll always be a description shown. And what often happens is when Google creates a meta description, it's much longer. If you look at maybe for your company name, you'll see the meta description is maybe limited to 150 or 160 letters. When Google creates a meta description, if you search for some text in the body of your website, you'll find Google creates a meta description and it's often 300 or 320 or 360 letters long. So Google can create much longer text, which shows the user much more about your website. So I say don't sweat the details with meta descriptions. It's nice to have them. I like to add emojis to the ones that I actually write, but don't get carried away trying to create the perfect meta description for 1,000 pages. There are much better ways to spend your time. Okay. Increase visitor time on page. You've got somebody to come to your website. You don't want them to bounce. You don't want them to go straight back to the search results and go and have a look at the next result. Present good content. It means you really need good titles. Content, everybody says content is king. It's not quite true. There's much more to content. There's much more to being successful than just having good content. But having a unique image really massively helps to keep users on the website. If you've got a stock photo that's been shown on 10,000 other websites, especially 10,000 with using the same keyword, customers recognize that straight away, recognize you're making no effort, and there's a very good chance they're going to go straight back to the search results. Take your own photos. If you can't take your own photos, then at least use unique images from, even if they're stock photos, you can take a section out of the photo. Don't use the whole thing where everybody's seen it 100 times. Change the direction of the photo can also help a little bit. But using your own photos is by far the best tip here. The images need to be optimized for size. We always talk about this. They need to be optimized for the image name, but they also need to have a good alt text. But much more important also is that they're aesthetic, that they actually match to the website where they are. And if you make your own photos, there's much more chance that they'll actually do this. There'll be images about you, your products, your office, your team, but don't just put in these standard images that everybody's seen on every single website. The next thing that's useful is animated images. There are lots of tools now to create animated GIFs or animated SVGs. They're really optimized, and you can use them to do a walkthrough through your product, for example. You can do a screenshot, how somebody puts your product together, or if it's a web application, or if it's an app, then you can do an animation, how people navigate through the app. But people always want to then watch the animation to the end of it, which means they'll stay on the website maybe for 10 or 15 seconds longer than they would have otherwise maybe stayed. Following on from animated images, add videos. Everybody talks about it. Everybody's pushing it. Almost nobody does it. I recommend not to add videos to your start page, or if you do, make sure you add them with special techniques so that they lazy load only on click, because videos can make the page slower, but videos cause people to stay on your website much, much longer. And no matter what Google says, time on site is part of the ranking. There's a lot of different metrics that Google uses to rank web page, but somehow user interaction with the web page is one of these ranking factors. So you want to try and keep people on your website as long as possible. You also want to try and make sure that they know what your content's about. So if you've got a longer page, and this is something we always keep talking about, you need long content, you need lots of information, put a table of contents on the website, on the page, so that the user in one view can see straight away everything you're going to talk about. And if he's only interested in one feature of what you've got on your page, they can click the link and jump straight to that section. You're going to have much fewer users going away because they can straight away see, that's what he's talking about. That's what I wanted to find. Maybe they search in Google for a particular term. They come to the page and they don't find this term there. And maybe it's 3 or 4 pages scrolling down to find this. With a table of contents, you can make it much easier to find this. There are plugins for WordPress. The Easy Table of Contents plugin is a very, very good one that I can fully recommend. Lots of themes also offer this feature. I mean, so Gutenberg doesn't have it, but a lot of themes actually have a table of contents feature that you can build in automatically. And they take all your heading tags and build a table of contents automatically for you, which is also what this Easy Table of Contents does. It builds an automatic table of contents based on the heading tags on your website. What have we got? A call to action. Every single page, from the home page to the contact, every single page needs a call to action. You have to tell the user what you want them to do. You have to tell the user, ring me now and we can talk about your problem. Contact me now and I can send you more information. Download my ebook and then you'll find out more details about these features that I'm offering. But you have to have a call to action. It has to be very easy to understand. It has to be very visible. So it has to be not at the bottom of the page before the footer. It needs to be somewhere where a user probably can see it before they start to scroll. There's much more chance that they'll actually click on it if they see it straight away. If you have a long page, it's no problem to put in the call of action twice, once at the top and once at the bottom. But don't just put it at the bottom, because most users don't scroll to the bottom of the page. They'll scroll a little bit. They'll scroll maybe until they find an answer to their question. But if you haven't given them a prompt what they're supposed to do next, there's a good chance they'll go back to Google or go back to another page. Okay. Something every SEO talks about without stop. And up until now, we've always said it's probably a ranking factor, and Google has always said it's probably a ranking factor, but now it's official. Starting in May next year, the core Web Vitals metrics, which are 3 metrics which Google has now well published and provided tools to analyze them, these core Web Vitals metrics are going to be a ranking factor, and they're going to be a major ranking factor. They're not going to be something unimportant. These are all about usability. They're all about how a user interacts with a web page when it first loads and navigates from page to page. And if these metrics aren't good, so Google says that they're too slow, your website is going to dramatically lose in ranking when May comes around. And some of these things aren't so easy to change. Some of them require you to change a plugin. Some of them will require you to use special tools to disable JavaScript from loading. Some of them will require you to do lazy loading with images. Much of it is easy, but it all takes time. And if you've got lots of pages, it might be that you have to do this for each page. So start working on it now. If you haven't worked on it before, then please start working on it now. Like everything before, the most important thing with page speed is images. If your images are 5 megabytes, it doesn't matter what else you do, your website's going to be slow, and you're going to get a bad metric for the first page load and for the single load. So analyze what the tools are telling you. Use different tools, because each tool will provide different information, and some of them are much clearer. The Google tool is not very good about what you have to change. I'll post some links later on, but there are lots of good web performance tools that provide much more detail about what you should be fixing, which images are your problem. I had one customer told me he optimized all his images. He put them into a plugin and optimized them for web, but the photos that come straight from his camera on the phone, there were 12 megabytes to start with, and the tool had optimized them down to 8 megabytes. And he said, they're all optimized. But that doesn't make a big difference for a user coming via mobile phone to look at the website. It still takes 20 or 30 seconds to load, and nobody's going to wait that long. Okay. Like I said, this is going to be part of Google's page experience score. There are other things that are already part of the page experience score. That's having a responsive website, using HTTPS, not being hacked, which is pretty obvious, I would think, and not having interstitials, which means not having pop-ups. Pop-ups, especially on mobile, are going to be punished more and more by Google, which is a real big problem for a lot of people using cookie banners. This is a big pop-up that comes right over the page, and users can't interact with the page until they've clicked away the cookie banner. I would recommend to rethink which cookie banner you're using. It's a bit of a problem. I mean, there are the laws that say that you have to use some sort of blocking thing until you activate any analytics and before you do any sort of user tracking. But interstitials are a problem, and I think probably the cookie banners are going to get punished for this. So websites that are using these big blocking cookie banners, that they're going to have problems with that. Okay, this is coming back to the officially a ranking factor. In addition to the things that I've talked about with images and so, other things that you can do to improve the page speed: remove unnecessary plugins. Too many users install hundreds of plugins just because they look great, and maybe they used a feature or two from these plugins. If the plugin isn't critical for your website, really think seriously about deactivating it. Almost every plugin installs a CSS and a JavaScript. And if you have 50 plugins and you have 50 JavaScripts and 50 CSS files, it's 100 files that have to be downloaded from the server. This makes your website much, much slower. So always go back to look, do I really need all these things? Images, I said images are good, and you should have good images on your website, but having 100 images is always going to be a problem. So sometimes it's good to remove some images. Sometimes if the image is just there for filling the space, maybe consider, do I really need this image? If the image is good for the users or good for your product, good for explaining what's going on, it's critical, it has to stay there. But sometimes people put in 50 images just to fill up space, and that's not a good idea. Better hosting can also be a solution. If you're having problems with performance, by having better hosting, you'll then balance out the negatives that maybe you're having with having lots of images or having too many plugins. Good hosting can also provide then better caching in the background. So sometimes better hosting is worthwhile. It shouldn't be your first choice though. The first choice should always be to try and optimize what's on your page and what's happening in your back end. And if nothing else is helping and you're still getting red lights for the core web vital metrics, consider upgrading your hosting. Loads of caching plugins are going to help with a lot of these factors as well. Things like WP Rocket, which costs money, but also the fastest cache, a free plugin which does amazing things. You need to experiment though. Sometimes I've installed one plugin and a website is 40% faster, and in the next website when I install it, it's 20% slower. So you always have to do testing. You always have to check your performance before you start, then install a caching plugin. Okay, my website's now 20% faster. Then maybe a compression, so a minifying plugin you could also maybe install and see if that also helps. Keep going until it's not getting any faster, and then maybe go one step back and just double check that it really is getting the performance did improve. And when you finish with the optimization, with the minifying your files and caching, go back and recheck everything's still working. Things like sliders sometimes stop working. Things like lazy loading from images sometimes stop loading. Sometimes contact formula, the forms stop working. So always go back and double check that everything's then working after you finish with your optimizations. This is something that's too many people don't do, and everybody should be doing it. You have to go to the Google Search Console and find out what Google is saying about your website. There's a section in the Search Console now for performance. There's a section there about Leistung, performance. So Google is trying to give you as much information as possible to show what's working and what's not working, and where should you be fixing things. So you should be visiting the Search Console pretty much every week to go and check and see what's going on with your data, to check that the curves are slowly going up with the traffic, to check that no keywords have suddenly crashed out of the search results. Maybe a new keyword is suddenly being searched for, and maybe you need to do some more work with this page. Maybe you'll find a page has 10,000 impressions, but only has 10 clicks. And this means then that this term is very important at the moment, but your website's not ranking far enough up in the search results. And maybe with a little bit of love, it'll then get further up. So go to Search Console, check out the tabs, go and check it all through once, but always keep checking out the performance, the speed, and the Abdeckung. I'll tell you about this later. I think I've just got a note about this a little bit later on. But there's one page that tells you how many pages have been indexed and how many pages have problems being indexed. Maybe they're 404 pages, maybe they are no index pages. And you should always be checking this to make sure you haven't made some sort of mistake. Sometimes just by installing a plugin, half of your website will be no indexed. So just installing Yoast might cause all your tags and categories to be no indexed, which could be good, but may not be good. You need to know what's going on in the background so that you know what you should be then maybe optimizing to improve these things. This is Google's performance tool. You should be going here for all the important pages on your website to check them out and make sure that they're all getting positive results, that they're all getting a green light. I'll go into this a little bit later, but mobile is now much more important than desktop. We've all been testing desktop mostly, but starting next year, Google is going to ignore desktop. Google is only going to be focusing on mobile. Okay, this is something a bit more in-depth for people who've got lots of content, and especially lots of long-form content. You can make major improvements, as in massively improving your traffic, by looking at the pages that you have and linking them internally when they're related to each other, when the content is quite related, making sure that one of them links to the other. This is not just good for Google ranking, it's also good for user engagement. The user finds out what your website is talking about and then is encouraged to navigate further into your page to find more information about specific topics. So when this topic is interesting to them, they can then navigate somewhere else or find more information. It increases time on site, and it has an effect on ranking. Anything you can do to encourage users to stay longer on your page is going to have an effect on ranking, but it also shows Google which are the important pages and which are the related pages to each other. And Google will then consider them not as one, but as a related content so that both of them help each other. I've got an example here from Moz. Moz had a domain metrics tool, and this tool was a tool that you could analyze your website and check, see what was going on with the domain metrics. This page didn't get much traffic because it was hard to find in the Google search results. They had another page about domain authority that was getting loads of traffic, but this traffic was all bouncing, was all going then back to the search results because there was nothing else. There was just like a description about domain authority and the terms, more or less a what is dictionary type result. They added an image and a text and a link across to the result, to this test tool to say, get your free analysis about your domain authority. This had within weeks, they were getting 33% less bounce, more pages being visited per session, the session duration increased, and over a couple of months, the traffic to the web, to these pages increased 42%. So both pages together as one unit. It was massive what this affected. You're not going to be able to do this hundreds of times on your website, but if you have two pages that are related to each other, and maybe one has a high bounce rate and the other has no traffic, link them up, and don't just link them up with a more information, a little blue link and linking across. Make sure that you add something context sensitive. Tell the user why they should click the link, maybe add an image, but be prominent, change colors, maybe have the bold text or have a call out, so a box with a button on it, but encourage people to go to this other page. And then both the pages will help each other so that you rank better in Google and that your users are finding more information. There's more information about this on the page here. Like I said, the notes are online, so you can then go and have a look at these things afterwards and find out they have much more detail in there about all the things they changed. And they also have detail about other ways to improve the internal linking, and also with then examples of how this affects the ranking and the performance of your website. But looking at these things, everybody's doing little tiny blue links. So when there's a keyword somewhere on a page, SEO, then they're linking this to the SEO page. This doesn't help a user, and most users won't click on these links. They're not informational, they're not context, there's no context there that the user knows why they should go and have a look across. You need to put in extra text when you're adding these links to other pages. So if I've got a link to an SEO page, I need to say, if you're interested in more information and gaining more advantages out of SEO, have a look at my detailed page about this topic. And this whole thing should then either be a call out with a button or can also be a link, but try and add a context so that the user knows why they should click, because then they will click. And when Google sees all of these clicks and all the navigation going on, these pages will be better tied together and will both rank better. Okay. This is one for people who are writing long form content. If you're writing pages with 5,000 or 10,000 words, sometimes it's important to organize them more easily so that the user finds what they're looking for and the search engines find what they're looking for. And a lot of advantage has been found with splitting this content up into different pages, topic clusters they're called. This is something that Yoast calls cornerstone content. And this has a real major effect for Google, that Google then knows how all of these topics are all connected to each other. So I would have a top topic SEO, and then under this topic SEO, I have a subtopic keyword research, a subtopic on-page optimization, a topic off-page optimization. But it's really important to get the structure correct so that Google and users can see where should they be going next, why should they keep reading, and how do they navigate through this content. So the first page is pillar page, which we're all talking about now. If you do any sort of research in the internet on pillar pages, you'll find lots and lots of examples, lots of tips on how to do this technique. It's not something for your mum and pop business. It's not something for small shops, but for bloggers who are writing long content results, for anybody who's going to write a long detailed post about any particular topic, this brings massive results. Instead of having one long page that's hard to navigate and which is maybe also not very performant, you'll have 5 or 10 pages, subpages, each linked with each other, each linked with the keywords to each other. And you'll have this pillar page which binds all of it together. And this pillar page will then rank for the really difficult keywords and can then compete against really strong competitors. So this, yeah. If you're generating this sort of content, please research topic clusters. This plugin I mentioned down here, Permalink Marketing Manager plugin, this helps to create custom navigation structure, so to attach different pages to different in a hierarchical structure. Even though the pages, maybe you've got blog posts and you want the blog posts to be linked under a page instead of being actually as blog pages. They'll still then maybe occur in the categories, but you can also then directly link the blog posts into a hierarchical structure. It also really helps with things like custom post types. Maybe you have portfolio custom post types, and you want them to be linking to a pillar page, so a normal page in your website, and you want to define how the URL structure is, the hierarchical structure of your URLs. This plugin makes it really easy to do things like this. And what's really great is when you change the URL structure, it automatically does all the 301 redirects for you, which is one of the biggest pains with setting up something like this. Changing an existing single page into 5 or 10 pages is to try and set up the structure so that Google and users then find the content they were looking for. So this is a topic, if you're doing these sort of posts, please research this topic. It's having a massive effect. This is then quite similar in some ways. This is where I go to the search results and I search for my keyword, and I see my competitors in positions number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then my website comes up and I have 2 or 3 pages in the search results, maybe number 6 and number 7, or number 7, 8, and 9. I've got multiple pages, but they're not at the top of the search results. And I want to be number 1, really. With the way Google's going at the moment, number 1 has massive benefits over any other page in the search results. So what I want to try and do is I want to optimize my website so that Google sees this is the page I want to be number 1. This is the page that I want to have all my results for, that I don't want to have these 2 pages ranking this keyword. Normally what we would do is I'm going to do internal linking from my second page, the less important page, to the page that I want to have ranking at the top of the results. A similar sort of thing can also happen where the wrong page is showing up. Maybe a thank you page is showing up in the search results. Instead of the contact form where the user should be submitting the formula to give me some information or maybe to ask a question, and they were then being redirected to a thank you page. And Google sees both pages and sees that the form is linking to the thank you page and thinks the thank you page is more important. This is a difficult question. There's a difficult thing then to know how you should handle this content. There's no right answer for all situations. Sometimes what I tell users to do is to merge the 2 pages into 1 page. This is especially valid if you have an old blog post maybe about a theme that you wrote 5 years ago, and now you've written a new blog post with all new screenshots and all new user interface and fixing all the bugs that you knew about in the old post. Google is still going to think the old post has more links, the old post is older, and Google will keep showing the old post. Normally the best situation in this case was either when you create this new post, simply extend the old page. Don't create a new page and try and duplicate the content and correct the content. Maybe just extend the old page, or delete the old page and copy the content across to the new page that was still valid. Maybe there's some things that are still valid. So you have a longer content page, but a single one, and 301 redirect then the old page to the new page. With blogs, quite often, blogs like Moz and Yoast, they'll often discuss the same theme every single year, or 3 or 4 times in a year. They'll be talking about how to improve your linking, or how a particular feature works in the plugin, or whatever, things like this. So they'll be generating the same page over and over again. In this case, what they mostly do is they will link the old page to the new page with a text at the top of the page saying this content has now been updated, and if you'd like to see our newer features, please go here. And making sure that the keyword that we're trying to rank for is part of this link across to the newer content. In a worst case situation, you can no index low value pages. So if there's really a page that's showing up that shouldn't be showing up in the search at all, this is quite often with shops. The category page for a shop often has no benefit to it. If it could have, and maybe if you've read some of the Yoast blog posts about this, you could actually create a category post for your shop that's actually a very valuable page. but most of them just have the 20 products in a category, all one after another, which you also find in the shop, that you also find through lots of other methods. And these category pages have zero value. In this case, I would actually no index the page, but leave it followed, so that Google will follow the links on the page, but will ignore the page for indexing. This is even more so for tag pages. Tag pages tend to be on lots of blogs absolutely useless. Yoast by automatically de-indexes tag pages, but it doesn't de-index category pages. So this is something you have to actually look at. Look at your search results, search for your website, and see which pages is Google indexing and are they actually valuable. Click on them, and if there's no text or almost no text on the page, it shouldn't be in the search results. Almost finished. These are things that are changing in Google in the next months. Google said last year that they were going to go to mobile indexing. They've slowly moved a lot of websites across to mobile indexing, but it's not being done for all websites. That was planned for September this year, but due to Corona, they pushed that back. In March 21st, 2021, all websites will be indexed by the mobile website. What this means doesn't mean that it's mobile first, it means mobile only. Google will no longer look at your desktop website, which means if you have different versions of your website for desktop and mobile, you better make sure that the mobile website has all the same content, has all the same navigation, things like mega menus. Lots of websites have a mega menu on the mobile, on the desktop, and on the mobile, they have a reduced menu, maybe with just the top categories, the top points. And then on these sub pages, then they have some sort of extra menu in there. This will have a ranking effect. It means that the sub pages in the mega menu that were directly linked from the start page before will now only be linked over one jump, or maybe only over 2 jumps from the start page. And that means they'll be considered less important for Google, and that means they'll rank less. So this is going to have major effects for lots and lots of websites. Lots of users hide certain images on mobile because they think the performance needs to be better on mobile. So I'll just show 1 or 2 images and not show my whole gallery. But if this gallery was important for the ranking, maybe all the images have good optimized alt text and have good image names. You don't want this gallery being hidden then on mobile, even though performance might suffer. It's going to be really, really important to check out your mobile website. Google's mobile test tools are really, really good at showing you what Google is actually seeing on your mobile website, and compare it to the desktop. See if they look quite similar, if the content is similar. What Google has said, things like accordions are going to have no negative effect. Hiding content in an accordion is something that Google recommends for mobile. The users don't want to scroll 100 pages down, so it's no problem to put content that's maybe frequently asked questions, just show the question and hide the answer for each of these and have the accordions all closed when the user comes on the website. This will have no negative effect on ranking. This is something Google has yet said. What else have I got there? That's probably the most important. That's the most important change that's coming for us. The core web vitals, which I talked about before, the speed. This will be a ranking factor in May 2021, and it'll probably be quite an important ranking factor. So between these two, by June, when these 2 factors have started working in the rankings, I would expect to see a lot of shuffling occurring in the search results. A lot of websites that either have no mobile website or a poorly optimized website or a slow website, they're going to suddenly drop down in the search results quite dramatically. And newer websites that are better optimized, they're going to suddenly have much more benefit than in the ranking, and they're probably going to climb up. So make sure you check these 2 things out for your website, and make sure that after these changes have occurred, that you go back and check the search results and see what's going on there. Have you got new competitors maybe that you have to then maybe change how you're handling? Maybe you have to change your meta description and your title because all your competitors are focusing on something else now. This is something that's probably a little bit harder to understand. Google has gone really, really fast with machine learning. BERT came out about 5 years ago, was a natural language processing system Google developed. I understand these queries that Google's never seen before. Probably 20 or 30% of all queries are unique. They've never actually been asked by Google before. And Google delivered very poor results for most of these. And they've been getting better and better now. BERT is now slowly modifying into something that's called deep rank. It's getting much faster so that Google can now use it in the live indexing. Up until now, it's mostly been used as an assistance to the ranking. What's going to come quite soon is this passage indexing. There's been quite a bit of talk about this in the press in the last 3 or 4 weeks. This means that Google will be much better at recognizing in a long page that one particular section of the page is talking about this topic. It's not in the title, it's not in the URL, but somewhere at the bottom of the page, there's a section, a passage that Google says is exactly what this user is looking for. This will be a ranking factor. We're not quite sure how it's going to work because it's not active yet, and it'll probably activate quite slowly. But what it means is Google will get better at recognizing parts of the text in your website and not judging it all, the whole page as one, but judging a snippet. So when a user would put in exactly the text that in your paragraph is, there's a good chance that your website will be the number one for this result, just because you have exactly the words that this user was looking for. This would then help with long form content. Long form content works better. And what should also then happen, it hasn't been defined, but I imagine then that when somebody clicks on the search result, they won't go to the top of the page, they'll go to the passage that actually has this text, that Google will actually then scroll down the page and show the user the correct section of the page. So hopefully that happens. That could be quite useful for a lot of websites. People who are creating good, unique content would definitely benefit from this. And people who are copying content or just have generic content, they would then suffer as Google becomes better at really understanding what the user wants and delivers better results. Websites that take the extra effort with their content should benefit. One other thing that I should mention, Google's having lots and lots of indexing problems at the moment since August this year, which means a lot of new content that people put online isn't getting indexed, doesn't show up in the search results. One second. So it could be quite, don't be surprised if things aren't showing up in the search results that you're expecting to have. There was a workaround for this, was to go to Google Search Console and you could submit your URL and then it's like Google should index this URL. Google deactivated this feature about 3 weeks ago because they're having so many problems that so many people were using this feature to submit pages for indexing that they had to deactivate it. And they haven't said when they're going to reactivate it. So don't be surprised if you posted a new blog post and it's not showing up online. That may not be that there's anything wrong with your blog post, it just may be Google's not getting around to it. That's me finished. I'll have to try and work out how to hand back over. There's a few further reading things here. All of these, if you're interested in one of these particular topics, these people have discussed the things really, really in detail and are really useful. And that's the link then for the slides on my website. But if you go to my website, you'll find it at the bottom of the start page. Thanks very much for listening. I hope I provided a little bit of information for a few people.